Today we're going on a road trip. It's a math road trip, so let's talk about what you need to pack in your bags. So for this trip, you want to be sure to pack your fractions, your decimals, your percents, integers, equations, and your unit rates. Are you ready to go? Let's start out just by talking a little bit about fractions, decimals, and percents. Here we have the fraction 1/8, and we want to write it as both a decimal and as a percent. I'm going to start by writing it as a percent. Remember, a percent is just a ratio with 100 in the denominator. This proportion may look a little tricky at first, but you know what? 8 divided by 8 is 1. So I could just divide 100 by 8 to figure out what x is. That's because these are equivalent fractions. These ratios are equal. When I divided 100 by 8, I got 12.5. So that means 1/8 is the same as 12.5%. Now let's talk about how we can write 12.5% as a decimal. Well, to rewrite a percent as a decimal, I just need to divide by 100. 12.5 divided by 100 is 125 thousandths, or 0.125. Nice, we've done the first part of the task. We've written 1/8 as a decimal and as a percent. So here are 3 models that 3 different students drew. 2 of these are right, and 1 of them is wrong. See if you can pick out which student has a model that doesn't quite work. So let's take a look at these one at a time. First, I'm looking at Alicia's model, and I see that she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares here, and she's colored in one of them, 1/8. So yes, Alicia's model is correct. Now let's look at Belle's model. I see that she has an 8 by 8 grid here, so that's a total of 64 squares, and she has shaded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.5. So she's shaded 12.5 out of 64. Now remember that our percent, 12.5%, is the same as a ratio out of 100. So that's 12.5 out of 100. 12.5 out of 100 is not the same as 12.5 out of 64. So Belle's model is not correct. We could use a proportion to figure out how to fix it. We know that Belle has 64 squares. We want 1/8 of those to be shaded. Well, 8 times 8 is 64, and 1 times 8 is 8. So we want 8 of these squares shaded. Here you go, Belle. Now you've got 8 shaded, and that's a correct model there for 1/8, 12.5%, or 125 thousandths. Now let's go to Carlos's model. He has shaded 12.5 squares, and he has a total of 100 squares. He shaded 12.5 out of 100, and that's the same as 12.5%. So his model works as well. So now we have 3 different ways to model this same value. Each of them shows 1/8. Each of them also shows 12.5%, or 0.125, 125 thousandths, because these are equivalent values. 3 ways of showing the same thing. Now that we've talked a little bit about percent models, could you figure out which of the models below represents 33 1/3%? You may remember that 33 1/3% is the same as 1/3. So we're looking for a model that is 1/3 shaded. Let's count the blocks in the first model. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 3 out of 10 are shaded. That's close, but 3 out of 10 is actually the same as 30%. Not exactly what we're looking for. Let's take a look at the next model. Each of these fully shaded models represents 1 whole, or 100%. And then finally, our last bar over here has 1/3. So this number is 3 1/3. Far bigger than what we want. We just want 1/3. Answer choice C looks good to me. It has 1 out of 3 shaded. That's 1/3. And then again, answer choice D has a whole, and a whole. And then we have 3/10. So this number is 3 3/10. So the correct answer here is choice C. Now let's see if we can use those percentages to solve a percent proportion problem. This problem tells us that 170 guests at a hotel called for room service, and 255 did not call for room service. We want to know what percentage of the guests at the hotel called for room service yesterday. So let's get organized. There were 170 guests that asked for room service, 255 that didn't, and adding those together, we can see that there were 425 total guests at the hotel. Now we want to know the percent that asked for room service out of the total. In other words, we want to know what percentage is the same as 170 out of 425. So I'm going to write a proportion, setting this equal to x over 100. But before I even get started, I'm going to look at my numbers. I know that 170 is a little less than half of 425. So I know that my answer should be less than 50%, really just a little less. That lets me get rid of answer choices A and D right away. I also have a strong hunch that the answer is probably C. Now before I get too serious, I'm going to simplify this proportion a little bit by dividing both 170 and 425 by 5. And that's a little bit better. You know what? I can simplify this even further. I'm going to divide 85 and 100 by 5. There we go. Now this is much easier to work with. I know that 17 times 2 is 34. So then 20 times 2 gives me 40%. And that's my answer, just like I thought it would be. Now I know some of you like to cross multiply and divide like this. Would that have worked? Sure. If you had done it that way, you also would have gotten 40%. One more problem for you before we hit the road. This one is a general proportion question, and it talks about ratios. We are told that the ratio of the number of boys to girls in a choir is 5 to 4. We're also told that there are 60 girls in the choir. We want to know how many boys are there. So let's once again get organized. We know that the ratio of boys to girls is 5 to 4. That would give us a total of 9. We know that there are 60 girls in the choir, and we want to know how many boys there are. We can use this information to write a proportion. 5 over 4 equals x over 60. This one is straightforward. 4 times 15 is 60. So we need to multiply 5 times 15. That gives us 75 boys. And that's answer choice A. The problem didn't ask us for this, but now that we know that there's 75 boys, we could also say that there's a total of 135 students in the choir. Our bags are packed, our math is ready. I hope you enjoy your road trip.